Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Weaving Resilience panel discussion on global economic mechanisms and sustainable practices in Bangladesh's textile industry. My name is Peter. I'm the responsible project manager at Trip by Trip, the implementing organization of this initiative. Most of you met me already at the recent kickoff events we hosted at each of the 8 participating universities. So before we get this started, let me take the opportunity and express my gratitude to the incredible speakers for joining us today. Each of them brings a very unique perspective to this conversation, whether it's expertise in trade policies, sustainability, environmental activism, or industry practices. I can assure you that we're in for some truly valuable insights. In the next 75 minutes, we'll explore the global forces that shape Bangladesh's garment industry, from economic dependencies and environmental challenges to fair production practices and water-saving innovations. These topics not only affect workers, manufacturers, and local communities in Bangladesh, they are also connected to the choices we all make as consumers as well. And therefore really looking forward to hearing from our speakers, their thoughts, experiences, and hopefully even some bold ideas for the future. So let's get this started. Thank you very much again for being with us today. Adiba, please, over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Peter, and good afternoon, good morning, everyone. And it's really exciting to be here to facilitate this session with my colleague Peter today. My name is Adiba Afroz. I am an independent researcher and consultant, and I specialize on labor, gender, and climate justice in the fashion supply chain. Currently, I'm working with Drip by Drip on this Weaving Resilience project. And I'm very pleased to facilitate today's session and excited for our discussion ahead. Before we get started, it would be great if each of you could quickly introduce yourself in a line or two. So I'll hand it over to first Sharif Bhai to quickly introduce himself and then pass on to the next person. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, I suppose, to everyone there. Though I'm from Bangladesh and it's afternoon here. My name is Sharif Jamil. You can call me Sharif. I'm an environment activist. I have been organizing community movement to protect environment and ecology of this country for more than 2 decades now. I'm affiliated with largely or mostly 2 organizations. Nationally, I work with a civil society platform called DHORA, DHORA. You can Google dora.org to know about the civil society platform. I was long time involved with Bangladesh Environment Movement, that is BAPA, and I am also in the board of directors of a global platform called Waterkeeper Alliance, and I coordinate Waterkeepers Bangladesh. Thank you for having me here. And I pass it to someone, maybe Shirin.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to you too, Sharif. My name is Shirin Araghi. I'm also an independent consultant, mainly working on educational projects, and I'm a sustainability manager in the fashion industry as well.
Next person.
Yes, I can go next. So I'm Francesca Giometti. I'm a sustainability consultant in the fashion industry. And previously, I have been based in Bangladesh for 4 years. I was working for an audit firm. I was in charge of environmental audits for fashion brands.
I can go next. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ashna, and I am a director at Incredible Fashions Limited. We are an RMG manufacturer here in Bangladesh, exporting mostly to Europe, and we have quite a strong focus on sustainability in our operations.
Thank you, Ashna. This is Mohammad Monwar Hussain, Chief Sustainability at Team Group. So we do have business in textile and RMG. We do have business in real estate, pharmaceuticals, and we have a local apparel brand called 12. So we are also very ESG focused business, mostly catering to the European brands and few American brands as well. Prior to working in Team Group, I used to work as a head of sustainability at BGMA. I worked there for nearly 10 years. Prior to that, I worked with World Bank and IFC and also with GIZ. So working in the industry environment nexus for a period of 17 years. Looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for the introduction, and I hope that our discussion following will help bring in these diverse perspectives on the topic of sustainability in the textile sector. So as Peter mentioned, we are discussing 3 specific themes, so let's get right to it. The first theme is on the impact of global mechanisms, and I'd like to start with either Ashna or Mohammed, whoever wants to go first, and then add afterwards. Based on your experience, what are the most influential economic trends? So, for example, policies or market practices that are shaping efforts to ensure environmental sustainability in the textile sector?
I'm taking.
Sure. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think in recent times we have seen that there is a huge regulatory change has occurred into the global business landscape, especially if I talk about the European Union's Green Deal and connected to that extended producer responsibility, carbon border adjustment mechanism, and also recently the CSRD directives, German Green Button, so a huge regulatory shift, Supply Chain Act, HREDD. I think these things have take the whole gamut of affairs of sustainability to a different level. So prior to that, it was like just good to have, or it was not that legislative or legit for the manufacturer to be adhered to those policies. So these things particularly change the burden. The burden has been shifted across the supply chain, which was once just on the manufacturers, and it was mostly in the name of compliance based on ticking. So now when we have regulations like from the European Union, like HREDD, or the, if we call about even DPP, digital product passport, is impacting or compelling the manufacturers to disclose their ESG informations transparently to the manufacturers. So that particular policy landscape change has definitely uphold the necessity of ESG regulations for the manufacturer. That's one point. Another point is, I think it is also about the consumers. The new generation consumer, especially the millennials and Gen Zers, they are actually are very conscious about the environmental footprint or social footprint of the product that they purchase. So they're very mindful about purchasing things, and they always look for the fiber composition. They look for the environmental footprint and water footprint, carbon footprint of the product that they purchase. So their buying behavior is also, compelling the manufacturing brands. I mean, the fashion brands and the manufacturers to look into the, environmental footprint of the product that they manufacture, and definitely, report the data of the supply chain to the consumers. I think these are the major things that those are changing the overall landscape of ESG practice for manufacturers in countries like Bangladesh, even the logistics and also for the brands as well. Nevertheless, the importance of circular economy, and we have seen that Fashion Industry Charter for Climate Action convened by UNFCCC, a lot of brands have signed to this pact, and brands are slowly, but surely reporting their carbon emission of the product that they manufacture. So these are the things, these are the trends that I think is shaping the future of fashions as long as sustainability is concerned. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for sharing those really important perspectives. And Ashna, would you like to also add to that, maybe like what has your experience been trying to implement them at a factory level?
Yes, of course. First of all, Monroe, I think you've done a very good job of like covering all of the, regulatory policies and instruments. I wanted to expand on something a little bit that you were mentioning, that so far sustainability has always been a voluntary initiative or a brand-driven commitment, but now it is becoming a regulatory imperative, which is extremely important. I also think that it's worth mentioning that, yes, there, of course, like now manufacturers that are exporting to Europe are obviously now having to abide by these stricter regulations, but there's also like local laws and policies that are, in place to support us. So this, for instance, the National Action Plan on Green Growth, which aligns with global sustainability targets. There's stronger environmental regulations, particularly around wastewater treatment and emissions. There's also a fair bit of financing schemes, especially in terms of renewable energy and so solar-powered production facilities. It's also important to note that all of this has allowed Bangladesh to now have over 200 LEED Green certified factories, actually, which is the highest in the world. As these regulations and policies, as they're expanded on, factories in Bangladesh, we need to increase our ability now, especially with DPP, to track and certify and report on sustainability metrics, which requires investment. The companies and the factories that have been investing in this for the however many years, they're at a significant advantage. There are a lot of factories that now, as these regulations are being announced, they're kind of scrambling to invest all in one go, which is really difficult, and they need a fair bit of support from them, be it from brands, be it from the government. But they definitely need the support for this to be implemented industry-wide.
Thanks for adding that local regulatory perspective as well. And we're going to go into more details on some of these like incentives that you speak of and regulations at the local level. Now I'd like to shift to Francesca and Shirin to understand from your perspectives. You're both based in Europe, in France and in Germany. And from your own work, how effective do you think these international monitoring mechanisms are, whether it's due diligence or fair trade certifications? Do you think they play a valuable role in ensuring sustainability on the ground? Anyone can go first.
Francesca, you want to start maybe because you have some certifying experience? Maybe that's interesting.
Okay, yes, I can start. So, yes, I do think these due diligence mechanisms and fair trade certifications are important. They do, I think, provide a good understanding of what should be, let's say, principles for sustainability. But I also think that sometimes they may need to be complemented by a more operational approach. It's not, of course, sufficient just to say, okay, there are some due diligence mechanisms and everything will flow. Of course, it's not that easy. And in particular for certification, something I want to highlight is the fact that many brands still rely a lot only on the certification to consider that, let's say, everything is under control, which is not the case, of course. And most of the time, there is a lot of confusion about what is the exact scope and goal of a certification. And it's not always covering everything. So it's not because you have a GOTS certified t-shirt that everything is under control. Because GOTS, to give an example of a very well-known certification, is focusing on the organic cotton traceability, And it's true that in the standard, they mention as well some requirements for factories, for example, regarding the wastewater treatment. But in reality, it's not that easy to go in details about how the wastewater treatment is done within this certification, because the goal is mostly on organic cotton. And it's fine, I mean, but it means besides GOT certification, the brand must implement other mechanisms to control environmental risk in the supply chain. So it's not enough just to rely on a few certifications to consider that everything is fine, which is sometimes the attitude of brands. So yes, and also I want to say that beyond these due diligence mechanisms, still having some follow-up and specific action at the production site level is needed. So what we usually recommend as consultant to brands is also to try to work with fewer suppliers, of course, to have a better, let's say, a better partnership with them to help them improve on sustainability and go on site and understand the reality on site. It's not enough just to rely on certification.
Yes, and I can maybe directly jump on here and add to Francesca's point. I think Francesca is totally right that many brands rely on standards providing a holistic framework that you can trust. And I think there's still this notion, or at least in the past years, there has been this notion going around that once you rely on a third-party standard, you can give away accountability, and then everything is taken care of, and you can basically rest assured and go ahead with your business. But what this legislative pressure is now adding to this is that it basically forces brands to take their own action and to start investigating. And we see that there's now a big movement going around that brands are investigating to what level the promises that they make are actually compliant, and they are now forced to investigate if those scopes of the standards are actually matching to the promises that they want to make, but also the strategic objective that they had planned for this standard and why they apply it. And another thing that also where the legislation and this pressure coming from the political landscape will help to create some more awareness is on this detachment of the standard itself and the certification bodies who actually do the certification. And there's different levels of connection depending on the different standards. And Francesca mentioned the example of GOTS, which is a well-renowned standard. And what they do is they really try to stay very independent. But it's, when a standard is super independent, it also means that they do not interfere so much in the way that audits are conducted and in the way that certification bodies go out and seek, certain approvals from different sites. And legislative pressure can, to some extent at least, help to or also bring some accountability back to the standard itself to see is the requirements that I'm putting out there, is that actually followed? And are the partners that we have to do the certification, are those suitable? Is there some backlog here and there? And do we have to have closer communications and more direct control over single bits and pieces? So this is where I see that where standards deliver a good framework of what we want to achieve for some scopes, there's still a gap between what is actually certified and who does that, and the standard who puts up basically the requirements. And this is where we see that this legislative pressure that comes up, especially now with the Green Claims Directive, that is forcing brands to really investigate what kind of claims are we actually making to the external world. And this forces them to have a very deep investigation. And this starts a whole new round of conversations that we definitely witness in the industry. And that is a healthy notion. And I think this will lead to some more productive outcomes.
Thank you for sharing detailed insights into that question. And as you rightly pointed out, certifications, these are just one piece of the larger system of efforts or smart mix of efforts that we need to lead systemic changes in the industry. Now I will hand it over to my co-moderator, Peter, to ask the next question to Sharif Bhai. Thanks.
Thank you, Adiba. Sharif, as an environmental activist, what do you feel from that perspective? Do the current discussions on sustainability, from your point of view, adequately address the most pressing environmental and community needs. And yeah, also not only the current discussion, but maybe also what we heard today already.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate the discussions by far, but I have some supplementary comments on this. As for example, the certifications are good for the factories who are compliant and who are going through the processes to comply with the environmental regulations or the compliances related with the labor and other internal environment of work. But to my understanding, certification is something coming from the buyer end or the consumer's end or the Western community who are importing goods from our factories. But for our factories and industries, there are government regulations put in place since 1995. There is Environment Conservation Act 1995 that says what kind of environmental compliances one factory should comply with. We could not ensure that compliances, and then that's why these questions are coming up. So this is one thing for ourselves. I will humbly want to mention this thing briefly. We have many legal frameworks. We have associations. As for example, BGMEA representative is here. There are many other associations. There are BKMEA. As for example, BKMEA president recently gave 50 lakh taka check to the students' political party that formed newly for the wounded students for their treatment, which I think is not necessary, where government already took responsibility for their treatment. But they should have looked at the 12 factory, those are under banning right now by the government for not paying the Eid bonus and salaries before the Eid festival. So the associations internally to look at the local regulations and to comply with their own things properly is important. This is a mindset. This is for our country. We need to protect our water for our generations and next generations coming up. But I want to bring another question, which I was involved with Alliance for Water Stewardship as a member to certify the buyers, whether they are ready to pay 1 cent more to our factories for complying their environmental compliances. When they are coming to fix the rates, they are bargaining with like other countries, Vietnam, China, nearby factory even. So our factory owners also need to ensure the profit of the investment. So we need to also look at the certification of those consumers or the buyers who are taking those goods from Bangladesh, whether they are ready to actually empower or capable our factories to comply with this. This is one of my 2 cents for these discussions by far. But at the same time, as you also wanted me to discuss about from activism perspective or the community perspective, it's a riverine delta. Bangladesh is a part of the largest active delta in the world. So whatever you think about this country, economy, agriculture, culture, food security, everything is somehow dependent on the health of the rivers of the country. And it is also most densely populated, one of the most densely populated countries in the world. We have on an average more than 1,200 people in 1 square kilometer. And if you think about the urban settlements, importantly, or more particularly the capital city and the adjacent districts where the garment clusters are there, the dense population density is more than 47,000 people in 1 square kilometer, which is really scary. And some of you stayed in Bangladesh, some of you are originate from Bangladesh, so you can feel how complex it is for Bangladesh from all perspectives. And our urbanization, our industrialization, our city development, those were not taken place following proper, regulatory frameworks, proper planning. Our, the detailed area plan of Dhaka is still debatable. and the industrialization did not take place following the industrial zones. The zoning systems came up after the garment sector grew up. It is the most important export industry for this country. This is true. We have to actually let them grow and survive. But at the same time, if you think about the rivers of the country, all the Dhaka rivers are toxic, and you cannot think of any dissolved oxygen there during lean period. And textile industry is mostly responsible for it. If you think about the upstream pollutions coming to the Dhaka rivers, I can tell you in Mymensingh, even the Kiru River, if you go by the bank of Kiru River, you will see the river is black and awry. If you go to Bongshi River, if you go to Chilai River, if you go to Turag River, all are dark. And these are all toxic chemicals coming from the discharges of the industries. So now we did some investigations also. We worked with some global brand also from Waterkeeper portfolio. We investigated some of the compliances of Levi's Stroud secretly. The Levi's local people did not know about it, but we were in a discussion with the global Levi's authorities, and we checked. Those factories are the most compliant factories in the country. I don't want to name them, but I think you all know these brands are producing from the very renowned factories. It is not that our factories are not good. We have more than 200 factories, as you heard already. They are really compliant. One of my board directors is a garments owner. The owner of the Standard Group is also in the board of the Waterkeepers organization here. So it is not that I don't feel it, I don't know it, but at the same time, I think we need to see it from holistic perspective from all stakeholders who are certifying it, who are monitoring the regulations, who are in the industry, and who are also looking forward or monitoring the environmental regulations also. But ultimately, if we want to protect the industry, if we want to protect the population, if we want to protect the economy, we have to make our industries compliant. And to make them compliant, not only the regulatory framework should be functional, but at the same time, it should be feasible to be functional. And to make it feasible, we need to stand beside the manufacturer. We also need to stand beside the laborers. We also need to stand beside the raw materials that are coming from. I
Yeah.
want to stop it here because I think I already took longer than other speakers. I have many other things as instructed by Peter, but I think I will respond to all these following the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll take over from here. And I think, Sharif, you actually provided us a nice segue to the next part of the discussion, which is the use of water in the textile industry. And as you rightly pointed out, that there are existing local regulations, and the fact that those aren't even being implemented should be of key concern. And that's something to look into from a more holistic perspective. You mentioned about the impact on the environment and the waterways and the role of different industry actors. Could you tell us a bit more about the impact of industrial wastewater on local communities and the people? Like what day-to-day changes or impacts do they experience on a daily basis?
Thank you. We had a study funded by World Bank, and Institute of Water Modeling did it several years ago. They did a study about the water pollution for the rivers around Dhaka, and they came up with a conclusion that 60% responsibility of the river pollution around Dhaka goes to industries, 30% from the service sectors of the government industries, government institutions, and 10% from the household. So 60% from the industries around Dhaka if you want to identify what kind of industries, largely you can say two industries, textile industry and tannery industry. these two big segments are responsible for the industrial pollution here. For textile, there are textile and garments in the upstream of Dhaka, but there is also dyeing cluster in Shampur. So dyeing pollution is very significant pollution for the Dhaka rivers. And these are polluting chromium, cadmium, cobalt. And I mean, like there is a study that found 11 kinds of heavy metal in the water and soil around Dhaka. So we all know some of the pollutants are carcinogenic. Some of the pollutants are very much influencing the waterborne diseases and also respiratory diseases by the riverbank people. They are impacted by it. We do not have any comprehensive public health study yet, which is very much necessary. And I discussed about this with a couple of development partners. If you can bring up some comprehensive study about what kind of public health hazard it already brought to our riverbank communities. But you can largely say that the riverbank community are very much impacted with this river pollution because some of the communities are highly dependent on the water from the rivers. Whether it's contaminated or it's clean, it's not a matter. They need to go to the river. It is a good thing for us, especially for Bangladesh, that we get 80% water during monsoon and only 20% water during lean period. So during monsoon, we get rainfall and we get huge water coming from the upstream that washes away the pollutants. Otherwise, it would be a disaster like humanitarian catastrophe.
Yeah.
So, of course, I can give you names, but this will take time. But of course, these are very much toxic chemicals, including carcinogenic pollutants are there.
Yes. Yeah, as you rightly pointed out that I think we're seeing that impact already, although we need studies to show hard facts on the ground. It's quite worrisome because we also don't have a very good public health infrastructure. So I think these challenges will be compounding if we don't address them sooner. Now,
May I add one more thing, which I should include, otherwise it will be partial.
yeah.
The garments industry also created a lot of opportunities and employments. A lot of people are working in this sector. So not only thinking about the community public health perspective, we also need to think about the health of the garment industry itself, because the impacted community are mostly also working in the garment sector. So it is like, it's not that if we comply with environment, then the garment industry will not be benefited. Of course, their workers are living by the bank of those rivers and those low-income housing facilities. So we also need to look at the health of the garment industry itself.
Exactly. And thank you for bringing that balance and perspective. Now, to understand what is needed to ensure the health of the industry as well, I'd like to come back to Ashna and Mohammed here. Whenever we talk about sustainability, one of the key issues that always come up in discussions is that of costs. Ashna, you already alluded to this earlier in your initial comments that we need certain kinds of incentives and business models. So could you perhaps elaborate a bit more on that? Like what kind of practices or incentives could be put in place so that factories are encouraged to adopt eco-friendly practices and solutions? Yeah, over to you.
Well, first, let's break this down into two key areas. So first would be the regulatory support. So expanding the low interest green loans and sustainability linked financing, it allows factories to invest in solutions like water efficient machinery or zero liquid discharge or more modern wastewater treatment facilities without those prohibitive upfront costs. So Bangladesh already offers some incentives. For example, there's the Green Transformation Fund, GTF, that's available at favorable interest rates, I think about 5%, and they're fairly accessible through the local banks. But there are some important things to note here. The process often involves a lot of extensive paperwork, and manufacturers usually need to hire a third-party consultant that will ensure that the factory qualifies for the fund. And from what I understand, the funds are only really accessed once the sustainable operation is already up and running, which means that there is a requirement for some bridge financing in the interim period, which is available at market rates. So that's something that needs to be addressed because that is a little bit prohibitive as well. And the second thing is we need strategic partnerships and market incentives. We need to be thinking about the types of partnerships that can make sustainability scalable, especially for the smaller and more mid-sized factories. So some partnerships to develop shared wastewater treatment infrastructure, for instance, is something that can be explored because many factories cannot afford a zero liquid discharge, standalone system. There's also a lot of opportunities for brands and sourcing partners to support these efforts in a more, say, structured or systematic way. For example, there could be a factory ranking system that kind of highlight for particular brands, it highlights facilities that meet specific sustainability criteria like water efficiency or recycling rates or emissions levels. And the factories that do that are in the top ranked, they can be incentivized further through higher volume orders or long-term contracts or more favorable faster onboarding for new sourcing programs. So yeah, I think those are some of the things that we can explore.
Thank you for providing such concrete examples on how businesses can be more encouraged. Mohammed Bhai, would you like to add more to that, perhaps also from your experience working at an industry association level? What do you think could be some incentives to encourage sustainability for manufacturers?
I think you have heard about the project called PACT, Partnership for Cleaner Textile. It's one of the projects that we did partnering IFC, and that is implemented in nearly 500 factories. I think one of the things that we were very successful in doing is developing some good case studies with good numbers. So what happens is whenever you want to convince any investors or businessmen, you have to talk in numbers. You have to open their eyes that there is an ROI in investing in sustainability. So it doesn't matter it's about energy efficient machineries, or even if it's an water efficient dyeing machine, or if you talk about rainwater harvesting or solar. I think all of these technologies have their own strong business case to invest for. Now, the thing is that the PACT project started in 2013 and then ended in 2024. So I think the basics has already been adopted by the industry. So having 240 LEED certified green factory building is a testament of it. And then if you add another 500 factories who have taken part in project like PACT, so that gives the idea that the basics have already been understood by the industry. Now the challenge is when it comes to SMEs. So the SMEs, they always deprived from the big brands not to come into strategic collaboration or long-term contracts or strategic business relations. So their business sustainability is not there. So when, as an investor, as a businessman, when I see that my business is not ensured, how come I invest in a solar panel, for instance, that has an ROI of 7 years? Or how come I invest in ETPs, whereby I don't have any strategic collaboration with brands like H&M? So these things are one of the impediments of not adopting sustainability practices by the SMEs. And what happening is, I can give you one data which is very alarming. So back in 2013, when I started working in BGMBA, the number of factories was 6,500, and the export was nearly 20 billion. And now we have an export of 47 billion, and the number of factories under BGMBA legislation is 2,000. So the thing is, in one hand, our export is enhancing. On the other hand, the number of factories is getting down. So that gives you an idea that the new sort of sustainable business idea or businesses are not inclusive, and the small and medium-sized factories are not being able to adopt these additional costs. So to do that, I think the major role can be played by brands. How? We have to come up with strong business cases in favor of the SMEs. They have to come up with good business volume and at least long-term contracts whereby they can have a visibility of their business. And at the same time, I'm accepting that there's a good number of green finance avenue in terms of Green Transformation Fund, and also the GCF Green Climate Fund is also coming up around 250 or 300 million fund for each call, and many other good green funding avenues are there. But the news is, it's open for the people like us. I mean, our company is near about 600 million company. So, banks come to us to give us loan, but maybe for other factories who have not very strong business, who need the finance more, they are deprived, because end of the day, banks looks into their financial health, be it green finance or brown finance. They look into the bankability of their project. And more importantly, we don't see in any bank there is any sustainability concerned independent director who can actually rate the worth of the financial proposal coming from SMEs. So end of the day, banks act like banks, and the numbers of SMEs are declining.
Yes.
So if it is going to happen, we will see a bunch of green factory, maybe 1,000 green factory and no SMEs. So that's also not good. I think we should have SMEs are very important for economy of Bangladesh and also developing new entrepreneurs. So I think brands can play a vital role here, and definitely there should have some sort of indexing mechanism from the brand end through which the good factories can be incentivized, because those will create some good positive precedents for the other factories to take up new things.
Thank you for adding that really important point about SMEs. And now I'd like to sort of bring a similar question to Francesca and Shirin to understand from your perspectives, what do you think are some of the key barriers to innovating and implementing water-saving technologies in textile sectors?
Yes, I think we have been talking about this. I mean, the first answer is, of course, the cost. And I will tell you a story. Yesterday, I was indeed discussing with an ex-colleague working in Bangladesh in a buying house. And so they work, I mean, they get the orders from the brands, and they find the factories, and I mean, they manage everything. And my friend was telling me, that today, brands are increasingly negotiating lower garment prices. So this is a reality. I mean, it's not super, positive maybe, but we have to have this in mind. I mean, the price is the priority of the brand, and perhaps still bigger brands are still, of course, focusing as well on social and environmental requirements, but it's not the case of the majority of medium-sized brands. They don't ask so much about environmental requirements nowadays. You know as well what is the international context, and we have to be, let's say, realistic on the situation. So of course, bigger brands are still there, I would say, to try to push on helping and making the industry reduce the environmental impact. But you have to know that many brands are not focusing on this because the price is the priority. So of course, there is an issue of cost. Who is going to pay for water-saving technologies? You can imagine how costly it is to implement what Ashna was mentioning, a zero water discharge system. So it means you have a wastewater treatment plant, very modern, with a lot of technologies, which will allow to reuse the water, which indeed is the best idea. I mean, it's what we should go for in the textile industry to really have a proper and the more sustainable approach is this one, of course, but this is very, very costly. So who is going to pay for this? So yes, definitely, I think Ashna was also mentioning the question of the investment, and I just want to say, yes, there are big brands maybe helping on this, but the majority of brands, unfortunately, are not focusing on environment so much nowadays because of the context and everything. So yes, I think definitely we need to keep positive, but the reality is still that the demand even for these technologies from brands is not so high.
Some different things to add on this discussion, which is, of course, it should be commercially viable and economically viable for both the factories who are producing, and that's why we thought about it for a long time. The garments industries in our country, as I said, was not following the zoning system, so it's scattered. But scattered, if it is scattered even, those are also in some certain areas. So we thought about cluster ETP, like it can be commercially also viable. If you organize an ETP, considering a cluster of garments, like 10 or 15 garments, will discharge their effluents to some certain effluent treatment facilities, which will be run in a commercial basis, then it is viable. Because the ETP itself will give commercial interest to the business entrepreneurs, and the factories will also be compliant. So the cluster ETP idea can bring a big solution for Bangladesh. Secondly, there is technology transfer is very important. There are many new technologies in the world. As for example, I got to meet about 4 times with Colors and Technology. They got their factory already in production in North Carolina, which is they are deionizing the crop when the threads is being produced. So the the dyeing is negative ion and the yarn is negative ion. That's why it is producing that much effluents, and it takes so much of time. But there is new technology that deionize the crop when the threads is being produced. So we need technology transfer, and policy should also help and guide the technology transfer to be facilitated. And to address the third point that Francisca was telling, yes, of course, buyers don't want, I mean, like the big brands do not want to pay for the garments. But think about different thing. When the Ukraine-Russia war broke out, I was in Germany, and I saw there are a separate cup or something in every coffee shop for people to give $1 for the Ukrainians. So if we can sensitize our consumers, our students, our people, that the water is very precious, and for the water contamination in Bangladesh per year, 30,000 people are dying for these waterborne diseases. So maybe they will give more honor to the people who will be wearing eco-friendly garments. Then the brands will be motivated to grow eco-friendly garments, and then they will get the price from the consumers, and they will be happy to pay it to the governments. We need to bring a change, like there is opportunity to do that if we can plan and project and play it comprehensively and together.
Thank you, Sharif. I think you bring us to the next part of the panel discussion, which is looking at sustainable and fair production practices and how we can move forward to address some of these challenges. And we'll come back to you. But first, I think my colleague Peter has some questions for Shirin and Francesca. Yeah, so over to you.
Thank you, Adiba. Yeah, Francesca or Shirin, from your experience and also from a more like Western brand perspective, what do you think are the biggest challenges brands face when integrating sustainable and circular practices into their supply chains, especially with regard to Bangladesh? Maybe you can share some of your personal experiences.
Shall I go, Francesca?
Yes.
Okay. So I think this is a very good question, and I could talk a lot about this, but I'm trying to keep it as short as possible. When we talk about circular practices, we basically refer to different principles of what circularity should mean. In many cases, it's about making optimal use of a product so that it never goes to waste. There should never be waste created, and in the circular economy concept, there is no waste generated because everything that goes to waste is a new feedstock for something new. So there should never be waste. That's basically the principle. When we talk about clothing, we look at a product that currently is mostly bought for a very low price, and people don't wear it for the whole life. So it's something that by the nature of the product is often discarded. Maybe because the people don't like it anymore, maybe because it has been damaged, maybe there's been some breakage, but usually the life cycle itself of the product is quite low. And I think one of the main challenges that we're facing to integrate those circular ideas into the fashion industry is to basically combine the different ideas that sometimes are contradicting. When we look at the example of a garment, then we will see that there are some measures that you can take to make it live longer. In many cases, that means that you have to add different materials into a blend that would ensure fabric stability and reduce the risk of breaking of the fabric to be broken. But those blends, if you mix many different materials together, it also means that you cannot recycle it as easily. And this then hinders the other side of this circularity thought. So in many cases, when designing a product, you have to decide between one or the other strategy. Do you want this product to live for a longer time? And then you would have to add some other materials to make it suitable for a longer life? Or do you want to ensure that it can be recycled effectively? And then you sometimes have to live without a certain material mix. So this is one of the key challenges that I see, that you often have to choose between creating a pathway to recyclability and creating a strategy for durability. So those two factors are often contradicting each other. And this is one of the main challenges that I see.
At the same time, could you perhaps also share one good practice you see that might be addressing or be a solution to this?
Yes, surely. I think there is many easy wins that big brands, but also smaller brands can do to make a product recyclable. And even if it's just to ensure that buttons can be easily removed. There are some buttons that can be screwed on and then screwed off for enabling easy recycling practices. On the other hand, it's about choosing the correct labeling. So even if you have a lot of labels and some brand icons attached at different parts of the garment, and even inside of the garment at the back or in the side, labeling can be made out of the same material as the product itself to ensure recyclability. Those are some best practices that don't cost the world and can be implemented easily.
Francesca, anything to add?
Yes, maybe I will not talk too much about challenges, but more about solutions. So we try to be on a more positive, to talk about what could work and be inspiring. Yes, I think circularity is also a concept which is a bit broad, and we need to be clear about what we are talking about. And maybe a recommendation for brands when they want to start working on circularity, they need also, to be clear about what they want to do. And as Shirin was saying, maybe you need to decide to focus on one topic. Maybe, yes, your goal is to have more recyclable product, or to have a higher quality of your product so it lasts longer. Or maybe you will only focus on the selection of material that you want in your product with a lower environmental impact. So I think that, yes, one recommendation for brand is maybe to focus on one strategy, and at least to try to implement well this specific strategy. Otherwise, you want to do too many things and you're not doing anything. Also, I think what's interesting with circularity, until recently, sustainability was a topic for the sustainability team in the brand. Now circularity is a topic for designers. So for even, I think it's super interesting for students now in fashion, they learn what does it mean to develop a product with a lower environmental impact. So it's not a topic only for compliance, let's say, for the legal department or CSR department. It's really a topic for designers, for buyers, and everyone in the company can be trained on circularity. And this is maybe also another good, I would say, a good point for starting with circularity is to upskill employees, not only in one department, but in all the departments, so everyone understands what is circularity and how to go in this direction. And also something else I want to mention, which is indeed a challenge, but still I think there are some solutions. We know that most of the impact is coming from raw materials. So of course here we talk about Bangladesh, so it's more production side, but when you look at the life cycle of a garment, raw material is having the bigger environmental impact. So finding alternative materials is key. And the challenge today is that it might be difficult to find this innovative material in the quantity needed for an affordable price. So what big companies are doing, and I think they should continue to do, is to invest in innovation for these alternative materials. So this is definitely very important. We see some ideas, we see some startups, there are a lot of projects emerging, but they need funds. They need to be funded, and so brands must continue to trust them and to give them the chance to become scalable. So if they become scalable, of course, the price will decrease. So this is important as well.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing those positive ways forward. And we always come back to this point of funding. And although it seems that the world has an abundance of funding, it's just not put to the right use, unfortunately. Now, same question.
Sorry, just because I will leave in a few minutes, I want to say something also I think very, very important is indeed, because we talk about cost. I was working for an audit company. So I know how many brands are spending a lot of money in environmental and social audits, mostly on social audits and environment, but still a lot of money on audits. I do think one advice would be to say that instead of spending so much money in audits, they should spend this money differently, indeed, in much more concrete projects to support factories. I mean, audits, we can have a long discussion about this. To some extent, of course, they are needed, but there are some limitations as well. And I do think that to have a real impact, brands could also shift the budget allocated to audits to other concrete projects. I have one example of big brand in Bangladesh, for example, investing in solar panels, but a real, let's say, supply of renewable energy to provide this energy to the factory. This, for example, for me is a good idea.
Thank you for sharing that. And now I'll bring the same question to our colleagues in Bangladesh. So Ashna, perhaps if you could share from your side, what are some good practices moving forward that can help the industry transition to greater sustainability and higher value-added products?
Sure. So first, I think we need to start moving beyond basic garments. So Bangladesh has, of course, we have built a very strong reputation producing T-shirts and jeans. But to stay competitive and to stay future-proof, we need to start focusing on higher value categories like sportswear or medical textiles or performance fabrics. There are obviously like much better margins here, but they also, push us towards more innovative and sustainable production solutions. So for this, we need to invest in a lot more R&D. We need a lot more technical support. We also need, some improvements to our own education sector so that we can all, the engineers and the technicians and the, technical people that we would require for this shift, we can be, fostering them and their education in the country. So we're not reliant on, importing, that technological expertise. Again, to go back to raw materials, as Francesca and Shirin have already, mentioned, we import most of our raw materials. This drives up costs and drives up our emissions. So if we can invest in local recycling plants and explore other, sustainable fiber production in the country, like different cellulose fibers, for instance, it would make us a lot more resilient and cost-effective and more environmentally responsible. And finally, nothing works without uninterrupted gas and electricity. So consistent energy supply is really crucial for us to be able to run efficient production lines. And without the operational efficiency, our ability to, pay for the investments that we need, it just becomes a lot more diminished.
Thank you for bringing in that really important point about, thanks, Francesca, point about, at the end of the day, we need also the kind of infrastructure that helps support to run businesses more efficiently on the ground. And for that, gas and electricity is key. And that's an area that not just employers and brands need to work on, but also the government of Bangladesh and our energy providers need to look into. Mohammed, would you like to add more to this point on some solutions moving forward and good practices?
Yeah, definitely. I'm just taking it from Ashna, where she was talking about the gas price and everything. So I see that in last 10 years, the price of gas has been changed abruptly, and it has been increased by nearly 238%. So now, see these things from an investor perspective. If I go invest in a business with more than $100 million, more than 100 crore taka, and it has to take minimum 10-12 years to be feasible and I get my money back, or at least it reached to the break-even point. So if the price of utility changes every now and then, price of gas, price of logistic, price of dollar, in fact, everything changes, interest rates changes. So this is a very volatile situation. I think in such volatile situation, it is very difficult for a new business to flourish, grow, and sustain. It is even difficult for them to survive. That's one point. So I think government should come up with some sort of stabilizing the price of electricity and other charges, even other government charges. That is very important. This is national. And internationally, I think the way we are moving toward more ESG focused business, I think the ESG parameters will be the next business dealing points with the banks, especially sustainability reporting, and also the digital product passport will open up the information about the product to the consumer, and the consumer then will not buy the product only based on the economic part of it, but also the non-economic value proposition of the product that comes with it. What is its carbon footprint? What is its water footprint? What sort of chemical has been consumed to make this product? So on this changed circumstances, I think we have a huge lack of expertise in the market. I don't know how many of our factories are doing sustainability reporting, but European Union has given up the CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directives, whereby every brand has to report on ESRS. But we are catering to those brands who don't have minimum understanding about what sustainability reporting is. Even if you think of the crowding investment from the consumers, if you can place a product with positive environmental attributes, and then if you can ask few cents more than a regular product, I think consumers can also help, especially when you talk about carbon footprint and climate action related projects. So if you see brands like Levi's or Lindex or C&A or H&M, they have a very ambitious climate targets. H&M, for instance, wants to reduce their carbon emission up to 56% by 2030. But where the emission lies, it's not into the H&M's operation. It's down the value chain. It's mostly into the manufacturing end. I mean, 60% of the product associated carbon footprint are in manufacturing end. And to reduce those emissions, we manufacturer has to invest in it. So I think there should have some sort of collaboration in between brands and consumers as well, because they are the ultimate consumers, and then manufacturers, whereby you can develop a project to fund those climate action projects. And this could also be leveraged in water and some other environmental attributes as well. So having said that, I think climate action, circular economy, ESG and sustainability reporting, greenwashing and transparency would be the next big thing that we have to maybe address from manufacturers and also from brands to be sustaining and to be flourish into the next decade and in the next future market.
Thank you for sharing that. And I hope that also like the current ongoing discussions there we're having on the omnibus proposal, it will do justice to the hard work that has been put behind some of these regulations to ensure sustainability in supply chains. Now over to my colleague again to do the final round of questions.
Thank you, Adiba. Yes, unfortunately, we almost reached the end of this panel. So we have one last question to all of you. And yeah, try to keep yourself short. So maybe only in one sentence, Sharif, what is your key message to students, especially in this project, of course, who want to drive change in the textile industry? What would you recommend to them in one sentence, if possible? Please.
Fashion is very important for the students. They are in their most fascinating age of their life. But at the same time, the fashion should be also projecting their high intellectual, ability to understand the crisis of with the global water crisis. So if we want to, they can project themselves as a compliant citizen of the world by protecting the water, by promoting eco-friendly garment products, then that will encourage the industry to also go for eco-friendly productions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharif. Who's next, please?
I could go. To make it very, very simple, always ask the stupid questions. Even if you think that's such a stupid question, and even if it's just why, always ask. And at some point, you will reach a response where somebody who has done the job for decades will tell you, I don't even know exactly why we do it that way. So always asking stupid questions and always asking, why do we do this, can lead to investigating where the problem actually comes from. Never be ashamed to ask stupid questions.
Thanks, Shirin. I guess that's probably a lesson for life you just shared, not only for the garment sector. Monova, what would you suggest, please?
I think being the new generation, they should be very mindful about rewarding the good things. I think this is the key. They should have an intended discrimination while they buy a product with more non-economic value proposition. They should ready to give more, and they should always have an intended discrimination whereby the green and good practices are being rewarded. If we fail to do that, in the days to come, you will only see the bad factories are sustaining. If the good businesses are not being incentivized, not being rewarded, the bad guys will rise and good guys will die. So let's not make it happen. Thank you.
Okay, Thank you, Monowar. Ashna, please.
I would say to be the bridge between innovation and impact, we need people who understand sustainability, but also how to make it work in the real world.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. This was such a valuable discussion, and I'm sure that all the students who are tuning in will gain really important insights into the ground realities and how we must navigate different interests and perspectives to, like you said, Ashna, bridge innovation and impact. So thank you again for your time and for sharing your experiences. It's definitely not an easy feat to bring in such a wealth of experience in one small 1 hour discussion. So yeah, I think that's all for today, and hopefully we stay in touch in the future.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.
Thank you.
Greetings from Berlin to all of you. And yeah, Eid Mubarak.
Bye-bye.
Eid Mubarak.
Eid
Early Eid
Mubarak.
Mubarak.
Bye-bye.
Yes, happy holidays.
Bye.
Happy holidays.